Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Armando Say. I am one of the founders and directors of an organization called MISSI. We run 2 cyber mission accelerators where we support both state and local government, commercial industry, Department of Defense, supply chain companies, as well as organizations with a lot of 3-letter initials behind their name, NSA, Cyber Command, not quite 3 initials, DHS, and we work with so many, probably dozens of civilian and Department of Defense agencies. Our organization was founded as a not-for-profit. We do cyber security research and innovation, as well as education. I've seen a lot of talk about education. We constantly are training college students, high school students, the Department of Defense, and the civilian sector on the contemporary issues associated with cyber security. We're not a university, so we don't take a university approach to training. We are a technical organization, so we typically deal in real-world cyber skills. So that if you come to any type of training that we provide, you're going to be able to go back to a desk and actually do it because you've seen it and you've actually defended it or you've attacked it, that kind of thing. Today we came here. I'm a Florida resident, Broward County, so the Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood area. And cybersecurity is important. It's important to this state. I'm noticing there's a lot of investment coming into the South Florida area around cybersecurity. But there's also a big deficit in cybersecurity education. The schools, the colleges do a pretty good job of laying foundation, but what they're missing is the actual functional skills that it takes to defend or protect the nation from a cyber attack. Why do I know this? Is because just between the fall of last year and this year, we've probably trained about 200 college students from all over the country through our program. We've also trained the military, and we see what the deficits are. And what we're going to talk to and what you're going to see today is a demonstration about one of the deficits. So in the defense supply chain, in the critical infrastructure chain, you will see that one of the major deficits is critical infrastructure understanding, control systems, industrial control systems, or OT technology. The Department of Defense prefers to call it control systems, so you'll see in any official document that we produce or that they produce, they will use the term control systems. The commercial world uses the term OT, or operational technology systems. Those are the systems that are tracking the fuel levels in those repositories out there that tugboat may be using for its navigation and propulsion, which if there was a cargo ship out here would be using for its own navigation and communications, but also ship-to-shore communications, as well as the ability to understand where cargo is. As you see, my intro slide here shows a set of cranes and a set of containers being picked and put onto trucks. If any of you have seen the recent news and you see what's going on in the Port of Los Angeles and the Port of Long Beach, you'll notice that the supply chain is pretty much backed up there. It's not a cyber attack, it's a logistics issue, but cyber attacks have already occurred throughout the nation. I'm going to ask that we advance the slide. So I'm going to have my colleague over here. Today we've joined forces with Armis, one of the many technology companies that we work with that helps to detect cyber attacks against critical infrastructure. One of the things that our organization does is test and evaluate cybersecurity technology across multiple spectrums for the Department of Defense and various other stakeholders. Our job is to determine, should the DoD spend $50 million or $100 million or $5 million on something? Does it work? Will it work? And does it work as sold or as being promoted? So we help find holes in technology. We just provide the facts. We'll say, hey, it does prevent this attack or can detect this, but maybe it only does it 70% of the time or 60% of the time. You see all the logos associated with our organization. Like I said, we operate 2 mission accelerators. One is called Dreamport. It's about a 40,000 square foot facility with classroom collaborations and labs. So everything that we do is lab driven. So we model and simulate the real world in everything that we do. You see all the logos of all the different organizations that we work with. That's just some of them. So I won't bore you too much with that. And then we talk about our cyber skills. You see our logo, which is Mission Acceleration, which is we help government accelerate their ability to solve a problem or get to a solution. The normal government, at least within the federal government, a 5-year sort of acquisition cycle. Prior to a 5-year acquisition cycle, they've spent 2 years talking about it. By the time you take their traditional acquisition cycle and try to deliver a solution in the federal space, the adversary has already moved on. The adversary doesn't have a cybersecurity acquisition cycle. They don't have a cybersecurity framework that they're trying to comply with. You know, they could care less of whether you're going to be CMMC or DFARS 7012, you know, or any of those regulations. They're going to hit you hard and constantly wherever they find the gaps. They're not sitting there waiting for you to be compliant with a single thing. Their job is to constantly take advantage of all of the gaps that all of us have in our various systems. The other challenge to the space is that most of the critical infrastructure is privately held in our nation. We work with the Department of Energy, and we're working with critical infrastructure for the energy sector. How do we share threats? How do we detect threats in the smaller part of that infrastructure? Mark, you can go ahead to the next slide there. We're so mission-oriented that when we get asked to go travel around the world or the nation to go look at critical infrastructure, we get you know, I land at an airport like I will in a couple days here, that site remembers, and instead of renting a car, they'll send a Black Hawk to pick us up. You know, and that's what you see there, there with Cyber Command. The people in the background are my Cyber Command civilian and military colleagues, and we're getting ready to tour a critical infrastructure site in the state of Indiana. I was one of the scariest flights I ever took because the pilot decided he was going to turn it into an amusement ride and twist and turn the plane and scour the top of treetops, all things I did not need to see. I just wanted to land and get to the site and be done with. You can go to the next slide. So a little bit of a fun thing there. What is our ecosystem? Our ecosystem is global. Literally, we are sort of the United Nations of cyber. We go wherever the problem is, wherever the challenge is, wherever the knowledge and the skill resides that we need to identify to help our stakeholders, government, federal, government, state, commercial stakeholders figure out things. Our other part of our ecosystem are academic institutions all over the United States that work with us to train students to use our labs, for us to use their labs, and those kinds of things. We work with just about every partner of the United States military. So you'll find dozens of languages being spoken or accents in our various facilities, because just like a couple of weeks ago, we had Germany, Japan, Slovenia, we had NATO partners at that time, all coming to our facility to discuss cyber challenges and problems. We also run major cyber exercises for our stakeholders, things like Cyberdome, which we'll be running here in a couple of weeks with the Israeli Defense Force and U.S. Cyber Command. That's a cloud. How secure is the cloud? We're moving to the cloud aggressively across the nation. I'll move on to the next slide. So that's our ecosystem. We're known for our events. We stream and host and curate events with some of the top cybersecurity experts and technology experts from all over the world. This week we have the AI and Quantum with the University of Texas, San Antonio. But that's Texas, and we just trained a bunch of students from Texas. Last quarter, we finished a program that had a substantial number of students from this area, in the Orlando area, and various Florida universities. What made me really happy was at the end of that 10-week program, we helped a number of those students get jobs with the Department of Defense, with Dell Corporation, Carnegie Mellon Software Engineering Institute, the creators, one of the creators, writers of the CMMC standard, which you guys are doing tomorrow, which is a partner of ours. So we've been very successful in training folks to actually get jobs, either graduate from the stage to a job or to reskill. We also work with veterans as well. We have a number of veterans that are working in our facility that are getting ready to part from the military. Mark, you can go to the next thing. So very global. Last year, this is how serious we are about cyber. If we're going to practice, we're just not going to read books and we're not going to play at it. That building there is a 150,000 square foot building. We had 3,000 participants to attack this building from all over the world. The Israelis acted as our blue team. They were monitoring the cyber attacks. While we had 3,000 registrants, we had an unofficial group of non-registrants from China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, because what we did was we set up this fictitious corporation with a website inside the building, all the usual things that you would see in any operational facility, networks, elevators, surveillance cameras, access controls, they were all in play. So Rick, as we like to call him, and when we do our malign influence and other stuff that we do at our facility, so Rick stands for Russia, Iran, and China. You'll see those discussed as some of the top 3 players and adversaries against the U.S. in the area of cyberspace. So this building, we hacked the crap out of it, took out elevators, took out surveillance cameras, reprogrammed the access control systems, all possible. I don't care what you have. There's nothing that stops anything at 100%. Simply will not happen. Your best protection is your best defense. It's to constantly be vigilant and constantly be upgrading what you have defensive-wise. You can go to the next slide, Mark. We talked about our training. We just completed. You want to just hit the video there? There's a little bit of a soundtrack on here. It's real short, but you guys asked about training.
We wanted these students to have a realistic scenario that they could go through and not just the typical capture the flag gotchas where something is just, hidden in a directory where it shouldn't be or things like that. There was a narrative. Each one had a story.
I came in honestly very overwhelmed for the first couple of weeks, and then coming out on the other side extremely confident in what I'm doing and knowing that I am here because I deserve to be here and that I've earned it and I've worked for it. So just be expecting to get what you put into it.
This is a fantastic fundamental skill building course. These culminating events where we get to actually attack and defend on an OT and ICS network. I want operators on my team who know how to use these tools.
Well, there you go. We literally ran a 10-week class that combined students with the Marforce Cyber unit assigned to U.S. Cyber Command. We worked with CISA, a bunch of other partners to train these combination of enlisted civilians and the next generation together. They all learned from each other over this 10-week program. It culminated in a force-on-force cyber attack scenario for about a week, or they had 30 different scenarios that they had to defend or to penetrate. And it was an amazing, amazing event. It was very successful. Tomorrow, you guys will be talking about CMMC. We've been working with the whole CMMC thing since the very beginning. We run the Department of Defense's pilot program for mentor-protege companies in the area of CMMC compliance, something called Project Spectrum. A little bit of a gap in Project Spectrum right now, waiting for the DoD to fund it for the fifth year, but we'll see what happens. New administration, new people. But as you can tell, very, very deeply steeped in the area of CMMC and helping companies comply. We work with a number of Florida manufacturers. So I'm going to breeze through this. We're here at Port Tampa Bay. In 2017, everyone knows the attack that hit Maersk and a number of other companies. That was Maersk was an unintended collateral damage victim of the attack against the Ukraine. It was a nation-state attack, but it hit Maersk, cost them something. Maersk cost them something like $300 million to restore their operations, but it also hit companies like Maersk and a bunch of other companies in the world. Some of those companies are still litigating, trying to get their insurance companies to pay their cyber insurance claims, believe it or not. I think Maersk is okay, but the other companies that were hit majorly are still fighting their various insurance carriers to cover their claims. A lot of cyber insurance excludes nation-state attacks, unfortunately. Lloyd's of London, who we study very confidently, has a lot of body of knowledge and practice there. The 2020 report reported that there's a 900% increase in maritime cyber attacks against OT systems, operational technology systems. It's real. You saw what happened in the Port of Houston. That was supposedly a nation-state attack that used an infiltration into some of the cargo that was headed towards another country, I think France, and the implants there impacted some government officials of the state, at least according to news reports. Someone mentioned the Old Mars water plant. That was an OT attack. One of the things that was interesting about that and the Colonial Pipeline is that a lot of people wondered, like, from an OT perspective, was that really an attack designed against the OT? It was an IT attack, as a lot of attacks against OT infrastructure still start at. But the reason the Colonial Pipeline was so devastating is they shut down all of their OT infrastructure. So even though they targeted the IT, it was still a very successful OT attack, because if you were in Atlanta, as my colleague here was, and other people around the country, you could not refill the gas tanks for your rental car as a result of the fact that there was no gas available or very little gas available. Here in Port Tampa, you guys are responsible for a lot of fuel for the state of Florida. Being a Florida resident, I see what happens when those ships get stuck out to sea because of a hurricane. The increasing automation of ship-to-shore and vessel automation is going to just continue to exacerbate the ability to do that. One of the things that we work with is cargo, rogue cargo. If I put a malicious IoT or other device on a container and I don't detect it, that while it's coming from overseas or gets here or whatever, that device can impact the ship and import-related systems. I used to support U.S. Transcom worldwide, and one of the things we used to do, we had a surge team that would go in and scan all of the cargo when it would come back from war zones to make sure that the adversary had not embedded implants into the equipment we were bringing back into the U.S. For further deployment to other war zones or training exercises. So very, very prolific. The more connected we are, the more vulnerable we are. Let's go, Mark. Let's go to the next one real quick, and I'll get to your section here. It's kind of stuck there, it looks like. There we go. So ransomware, still the #1 attack vector. You'll hear it over and over again. Why? Because a human is easier to hack than anything else. If I hack the human is my biggest insider threat to any organization. Stuxnet was done over the thing against the Iranians, the Iran centrifuges was eventually the way that malware got into that facility was through a human. Some of the more recent, over the last couple of years, attacks against ports have been structured around getting to the human to put a USB stick into the port system and then locking up the system. I don't have to tell you about, you can read the public reports about people that have gone to jail throughout the world for being compromised and then shutting down the operations of a port because of that. NotPetya was the attack that I talked about in 2017. It was malware, devastated Maersk, of course, who was an unintended victim. Maersk had to restore 49,000 laptops and then some. In fact, I was just talking to some folks there. As we go into the demonstration, I don't really, standards are good. They give us a framework for securing our environments. The way cyber attacks manifest themselves are horizontal in nature in many industries. And it doesn't take someone who graduated with a PhD in cyber to take down an entire corporation, entire city. Cyber attacks are sold on the dark web all the time for little to no money. It all depends on the actor and what their event is trying to do, what their objective is. Let's go to the next slide, Mark. I'll blow through that, but one of the things that we do when we're studying is like, wow, Maritime Cyber, they're really, they're rinsing and repeating a lot of the same sort of things that we see in IT and in other industries. Maybe that's a good thing, if it works there, it'll work, within a different context. So that just tells you some of the stuff that goes on within the regular cyber attack. None of these 5 steps are any different than anything else that we see in the world. The context may be different, but the basic steps typically are the same. Go ahead, Mark. Yeah, a little slow there. There we go. So now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague here. I won't go too deep into his background because his background's a little bit sensitive in terms of what he used to do in the world. But when we want to figure out whether something works or not, whether it's resistant to a cyber attack or not, or we want to find a 0-day or a vulnerability in it, Mark leads our red team that does that. He is a hacker by trade, obviously having worked within the Department of Defense. He luckily now works for us, and he's one of the teams that leads our ability to determine how solutions work and how effective cyber attacks are or aren't against different technology. And he works with our vendors like Armis or whatever to do these types of exercises. You see Brian there from Armis. He's a local guy working with CENTCOM and other local companies here on OT cybersecurity using their technology. So Mark, I'm going to have you step up and do your thing.
All right, hi folks. Let's get started with just one sentence of intro. Imagine I'm here at the Port of Tampa and I'm about to launch an attack on this port. I start with, make sure that plays. I would start with a radio survey. Okay, I'm going to try and use as plain and concise of the language as I can. There's no interest in, doesn't want to play for me. There's no interest in boring you with technical nonsense. Okay, watch what we're doing here. I need to know the signals that are transmitting. I need to know networks, I need to know devices. Watch as I use a commonly available tool to find signals in my simulated harbor back at the Dreamport facility. Okay, I'm gonna stop my first survey when I find a network that I believe is my target. It took me 30 seconds here this morning. I'm gonna go ahead, as you see there, that's my target network. I'm going to go ahead and I need to relaunch that survey because now that I found a network I can attack, I need to find devices that are connected to it. I'm going to use the same tool again, but I'm going to filter What I'm looking at, to just focus on my network, it's called Port Authority here. There's a number of networks. There's one just for this building. There's a number of networks here at this location. When we do so, we're going to find a lot of information about the devices that are transmitting. Think about what might be at this port. IoT, tablets, PCs, vehicles, servers that are out in public. They're all going to show up just like this. That's that information on the bottom of the screen. I know manufacturer. I know signal strength, which means I know how close they are to where I'm located. I'm going to do this survey multiple times, and it's not going to be very easy to spot what I'm doing because I can hide my gear. I'm also probably going to bring in other people to do it and help me. When we're done, we're going to actually, how far do we go? When we're done, we move on to the next phase. I'm going to run DAuth attack. I'm going to use this commonly available tool, and I'm going to kick all those devices off this network because they're going to try and reconnect. Let's see if we've got it. Physical reconnaissance of the facility would have been done. I would have used a team of people. I would have done it during business hours and during non-business hours. I'm going to find out where I can park. I'm going to find out how long I can be there. I might even actually try to test the limits of a guard coming up to me and asking me why I'm here. I will have done all of that in advance.
I would get on my boat and survey the port, almost the Coast Guard style thing, like I do in the port of Miami all the time.
Right here.
Pictures of the cranes and everything.
Okay, here we go. Advance one slide, please. Go forward one slide. There we go. All right, this tool is going to kick all of the devices off the network. And when I do that, yes, I will have revealed my position. I will have revealed my intent. And if people are trained, they're going to know something's wrong. I will also have crossed the line because when they connect, they're sending information to try and reconnect to the network, which I'm also capturing. See it in the upper right-hand corner. If I do this attack long enough, if I capture for long enough, I can actually feed this to my next tool, which is going to get the wireless key. And unfortunately, unless you implement specific mitigations for what we're doing here, I will get the key.
I'll add that when we work with the small defense contractors in the state of Florida, or anywhere in the country, one of the biggest things that we find is they configure their wireless access points, servers, and security with default passwords. They outsource it, and I've literally seen the logins to banking, financial, human resources, their accounting systems, flying right over the internet from the parking lot. And it's totally unbeknownst to them. So one of the first things that we do when we work with defense contractors is we act like the adversary. We act like the person who's going to try to take them out. What can we discover that's unprotected? We scan that network, just like Mark said, to determine what those vulnerabilities are. I don't care about what standard you're going to achieve eventually. The adversary doesn't care either. They care about what's vulnerable today. If your passwords, you're communicating in an unencrypted, you have internet-facing assets, like we had a manufacturer, a DoD supply chain manufacturer in Jersey, whose financial server was out exposed on the internet. Our team caught it, but what we caught was someone in Russia trying to break in, doing a password called password spraying account. So anything that's visible on the internet, most small businesses or medium-sized businesses have small footprints, but it's discoverable. There's a program called Shodan, which gathers IoT and OT devices from all over the world and just tells you where they are. And some attackers will use that. It's probably about 80%. You right?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. We're going to skip over the recon phase because we don't want to make you sit for too long. By the time I've conducted my recon, I'm on the network. I have crossed the line. I know that. I'm willing to do that if I'm going to be successful. I now have 3 hits I can deliver to my simulated network to stop it dead in its tracks. Let's go to the first one. Next slide, please. And go ahead and start playing. All right, there is some sort of manifest tracking in the harbor. Okay, there's got to be. We have one in our harbor. We just call it SATS. It's a web application. If I use a tool to scan the network for web applications, I'm going to find it. Don't want you to have to sit through that. But there it is right there. Okay? This application, not only does it have vulnerabilities, but the server it's running on has vulnerabilities, both of which I've found during my scan. Now this could be me as the attacker interacting with the application, or this could be an employee of the port interacting with the application, okay? It may not look the same as what you see here, but I guarantee you this facility has one. They likely have multiple. And we know that through experience. Now watch as whoever that is actually uses an attack to gain access to the server where this website is located. Now let's be honest. If it were a pen test, a vulnerability report would be enough. This attacker is not here to pen test. They're not only going to identify the server that's running, they're going to destroy it. They're going to stop the application and they're going to delete all the records. If you are on a network, I see some Coast Guard people here. If you're on a network that is a ship, or if you're in a port facility, do you have a backup? Does the network have a backup? You can see here, watching the process list, whatever that means, finding the application, and the payload should be within seconds here. We're using a technique that people call living off the land to destroy it. Here comes the delivery here. Right there. Not only did I attack the network, watch as I try to reload that shipping application. It's gone. I hope to God the port has a backup. Actually, to be more specific, I'm also going to look for the backup too, and I'm going to delete that. Let's move on to the next one. This one is the, well, let's call it the Crown Royal. Go ahead and play. There is a crane in this simulated facility, okay? There's a crane in this network. During my reconnaissance, I found it. How did I find it? I found it because I found a control system, a programmable logic controller. Yes, it's simulated, but the same, actually, Armando just greenlit the purchase of PLCs designed for real cranes. So by the time Thanksgiving rolls around, that will be the same controller that controls the cranes like you see outside. I had to create a custom payload to attack that crane. All right, what you're seeing here is me using PowerShell, whatever that is, to deliver that payload onto the network and execute it. There, it's been delivered. And the next command is going to be the execution of it. If you didn't think my presence may have been known by the employees, by that Wi-Fi attack or deleting that manifest server, imagine what would happen. That poor recorder, the poor remote threw me off my game. Imagine what would happen when I run.
So Mark was mentioning PLC. Here's an example of PLC. It has an Ethernet port and a serial port.
That's the one that controls cranes.
Right. So this actually is a live production. It's spotted just like any shipping company or any crane, company that operates cranes. This is one component within a series of components that attach to each other. Again, Ethernet port and a serial port. This is I won't talk about who the crane manufacturer is. I will talk about who the manufacturer of the PLC is. It's Emerson. I'll let you guys Google the vulnerabilities for this Emerson. It's called the CPE 302. CISA, NSA, Cybercrime have all published vulnerabilities against this. One of the simple vulnerabilities against this is I don't have to destroy this device by physically connecting to it or taking a hammer to it. If I get to a network where I can send enough instructions to this device to get it confused, it shuts down. So if it's operating a crane as it does in the real world, I can shut it down, and that vulnerability is published. I forget what criticality it had in it. But again, this is an Emerson CPE 302. You can Google, these devices live all throughout here, whether it's this brand, whether it's Siemens, whether it's any other manufacturer. These things come up with vulnerabilities all the time, and that's some of the things that we test. A lot of people think about IT. Here's an OT system right here that connects. This thing also connects to a software application that allows you to control the crane. So once I get to this, I can protect the IT system all I want. But if I can get to this, I can take a lot of things out of commission.
So it's important to understand it might be simulated on what you see in front of you on the screen. It's real. Okay, this is not a pen test. This is not a security assessment. This is an attack. This is an attack. This is what I do. Okay, let's go to the next slide. That was the second punch. Yes, everyone's going to know something's happening, but in the context and execution of my attack on the port, I'm going to go, all right, go ahead and play whenever you like. I am going to go ahead and I'm going to deliver my final attack without any hesitation, without any delay. Missy has several pieces of ransomware that we've constructed. In Greek mythology, Bellerophon is the hero that defeats the chimera. If we need to understand how to defeat ransomware, we need a chimera to attack. We've built our own. Watch as it's delivered into this network as an employee tries to run. They're logging into their desktop. I've already used an exploit to push the ransomware onto their desktop, and it's going to run as soon as they log in. How many of you have been subject to a ransomware attack? This is a ransomware attack. Watch. The backdrop changes. Instructions get dropped to the desktop of what you should do. What would you do? Would you shut your computer down? Would you try and kill the process? Would you call for help? By the time you call for help, it's too late. Now, because I'm not playing, even in this simulated attack, I'm not saving the key. They're never going to get their files back.
That's a very important point. There was some talk about paying the ransom. First of all, the U.S. Law enforcement has prohibitions against paying certain ransom to certain sanctioned organizations and states. That's one thing, so you have to be careful about who you pay the ransom to. You could be committing a crime. Two, the chances of you getting the keys to decrypt what has just happened to you are very slim. Every once in a while you're lucky and you get a good decryption key. The adversary does not spend as much time providing the decryption as they do the encryption, frankly. They do a better job at encrypting because that's where the punch is. That's where you're going to pay the money. Technically, they're not as concerned that if you pay the money that you're able to recover your file. In the Oldsmar article, if you look at the deconstructor that FBI and the system folks that participated there, you will see that they did make attempts to reverse engineer the malware. They were somewhat successful. It was very tedious. They decided that through other measures they were going to be able to recover. They were going to be able to recover their files, even though they paid. There's a certain percentage, a high percentage of really bad decryption software. There are some good guys out there that store decryption keys to known malware. There's a guy who actually works at almost like a Best Buy type store in the middle of the Midwest somewhere. He's a genius, and what he's done is anytime he decrypts ransomware, he'll make those decryption keys available, but he doesn't have 100% of them. He may not even have 50% of the keys. So what Mark was talking about, do you have a backup? It's not just do you have a backup, is your backup encrypted?
Multi-level.
Multi-level, multiple. 3-2-1 is the concept for backup. You have 3 backups, obviously two different sets of media and 1 backup that's off-site. The biggest thing about ransomware is that it will encrypt anything that it can get to on a network or connect to, right? So if you have an off-network backup that's encrypted, well, that ransomware is obviously not going to get to that, and that's your last measure of saving grace. The other question I would say, encrypting your data alone does not protect you. Why? So let's say you're at the hotel and you're storing your most valuable property in the safe. I come in and I take the safe and I lock it up in my safe. Yes, I can't get into your safe, but you can't get into mine either. I still have your data. You can't get to it, and maybe I can't make use of it, but you're still debilitated. That's where your off-site backup makes sense in any enterprise.
All right, we're going to go to the next slide. But before we play, I just want to impart one piece of advice. Please, Armis allowed us to be here today. Watch as they catch this attack. They got me dead to rights. If you don't have an Armis, please talk to somebody, because I can actually do this, okay? And the person that might attack this port or the port of Miami, they may not have sworn an oath to the Constitution like I did. Let's play. If you have any questions when we're done, talk to Brian, okay? Go ahead and play. Yeah, this is going to show how the Armis platform catches me. Where's the volume?
We're missing the sound on here.
Wi-Fi access point. That is quickly followed by a second alert, which is that device, when introduced into the network, is offering up unauthorized software. In this case, reconnaissance software has been identified on this device, which inevitably leads to alert number 3, which is unauthorized activities, which is the actual port scans that XPS Black is engaging in.
Yeah. So
That
we're going to
leads
pause
to
this. You
alerts.
can see the rest of this at our booth. The real point of this is that Mark's first set of attacks were not defended by any tool that was on the target environment or network. His reconnaissance wasn't detected. His eventual exploitation of signals and network traffic that he saw weren't detected. And his eventual delivery of his own brand of custom ransomware. He's a guy who can write his own ransomware, so he's kind of scary. So I always want to make sure he eats and it's well taken care of, because he can do some pretty good damage on his own. But the Armis platform, it's fired up. It learns the network environment. I mean, there's other tools that do this as well, but Armis was our key partner here. They happen to, again, to be close by. They were able to detect Mark's various intrusions into the network environment and actually stop it. So they're tools that, hey, you got ransomware going on, or you got this going on, but does it help you stop it? The Armis platform was able to debilitate Mark's, the success of his attack, by basically dismantling it, not only just alerting, but also stopping it. There's a lot of things we could talk about that would have deterred Mark. Most organizations don't have things like zero trust. Do you have endpoint protection, MAC address, IP address, network segmentation, geolocation, boundary protections, different policies and stuff that could have thwarted Mark at different points or contained the impact of his attack on the environment. That's not the real world that we live in today, at least not in the average company or the average operation, because of the kinds of investments that it takes to implement these policies. With that, I'd like to thank you for allowing us to come here and present. Have a successful rest of your conference. And again, we have a little booth over there where we're at if you have any questions about some of the things that we do and some of the things that we help government and state agencies as well as commercial entities with. Thank you so much.